This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. This is my podcast. How we feeling out there? How we doing? I hope you're well. I hope you had a good week. I hope you're easing into fall. I mean, I guess it's already fall. I hope you're preparing for winter. This is the first time in 5 years that I've lived somewhere that has a winter. And I gotta say, I don't love cold weather. I don't like snow that much, but just being around as the seasons are changing, the leaves are turning colors, it actually does feel good, man. Makes me feel a little more human, feel a little more connected to our planet. I just saw an article that there are rolling blackouts and wildfires back in California where I used to live. And don't get me wrong, I still love it there. I'll probably end up living there again in my life. But I guess this is just a little reminder to embrace that change, even the ones you aren't that stoked about. Sometimes it ends up being the best thing for you. And actually, speaking of Southern California, that's where I recorded this week's episode with this week's guest, Barely Alive. That's right, Barely Alive is on the show. This was a fun one. I squeezed it in right at the end of my trip. And look, right now, Barely Alive has a brand new merch collection that just dropped. You can grab that at barelyalivemerch.com. They've also got a Patreon page set up where they're giving out sample packs, they're reviewing tracks that producers submit, they're posting tutorials, a bunch of cool stuff. So you can check that out at patreon.com/barelyalive. And they've got a brand new song that's dropping this week called Spicy Future. So go grab that, and there's going to be a link in the description of this episode where you can go get everything from Barely Alive. I'll tell you a little bit more about how we linked up and what that was like in just a second. Before I do, Back to Back is brought to you this week by my friends over at Serato. And I was actually just on a call with Serato a couple days ago. It's always great to check in with them, see what they're up to. You know, their artist relations, the way they treat their customers is so awesome. And recently, Serato just dropped their new big product, and that is Serato Studio. So for all my producers out there, listen up. This is for you. Serato Studio is a brand new beat-making tool that's going to help you simplify the path to music production. If you've ever sat down and tried to make music, whether you're a beginner or whether you've been doing it for 10 years, you know sometimes it's really frustrating hitting those technical roadblocks, the things that just slow you down when you just want to get that idea out of your head and out into the world. So that's what Serato Studio is here to help you fix. It comes built in with tons of loops, effects. They've got the famous Serato pitch and time algorithm, so you can really play around with audio. It's super intuitive. They've got cool features like you can change the key of your entire project with just one click, which I've never seen that before. That's such a cool idea. And if you're hearing about this, it sounds cool, you want to give it a try. Right now, Serato Studio is free to try for the first 14 days over at www.serato.com/studio. So all my producers, head over there, grab your free trial of Serato Studio. All of that is over at www.serato.com/studio. All right, so for today's episode with Barely Alive, like I said, we met up in Los Angeles on my last trip out there. I had DM'd him actually a long time ago trying to get in touch because I've always loved their music. I always thought it would be cool to have them on the show. And then randomly, while I was in LA, he saw the DM, and just in a matter of hours, we kind of set up for the last possible slot that I had available before I was leaving LA. So it was great. I drove over to Willy's studio. By the way, this is a milestone. The first time I have ever interviewed someone else who's named Willy. There's just not a lot of us in dance music, man. So this was a meeting of the minds. And Willy is one half of Barely Alive. He's sort of the public face of the project. He's the member that tours. And we get into sort of that group dynamic, how they split up the workflow, all of that in this conversation. One weird thing, and I think you can hear this just a little bit in this episode. On and off, there was this weird background noise, talking. It sounded something like a conversation or like a TV that was turned really low. And I swear to God, we could not find this. We stopped the recording a bunch of times to try to figure out where it was coming from. We never figured it out, and eventually it just stopped. So we just called it a ghost. I think it might have been a ghost. I have no idea. It was really weird. I caught it a little bit again when I was editing this episode. So if you catch it out there, that's just the ghost talking to you. I don't know what to tell you. But this was great. We got into a lot. I love Barely Alive's music. They're one of my favorite bass music acts out there right now. They're doing it a little different, and I think they're really raising the bar for everybody out there. So I hope you enjoy this one. If you do, don't forget, we need your support. As always, the best way to help support Back to Back, to help this show grow, is just by word of mouth, just by spreading the word. So tag us in your stories. Throw up a tweet, let people know you're tuned in. I'm at Willy Joy on all social media. The show is at Back to Back Pod. I'm always going to be replying to you guys, reposting anything you're putting up there. I always say this, but it's true. I love connecting with you guys. I love finding out who's listening, meeting new people, having these conversations. It's just what I like to do. And it doesn't cost you anything. It's just a free, quick, fun way to help support me and what I'm doing over here with this show. So shout out to everybody doing that. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a rating and a review if you feel like being a good Samaritan, and we're going to have some fun with this episode. So let's get into it right now. This is me and Barely Alive, back to back. Let's go.
Can you put extra multi-band compression on my voice so I sound really cool?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll make you sound like you're in witness protection.
Nice.
Which would kind of go along with the whole mask
Yeah, the
thing.
mask thing. Yeah. When we do videos, we actually just dub over my voice with like bass noises and then add subtitles.
Really?
So it's like...
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you not... This was something I was wondering, was like, how public do you keep it? Is it... I mean, it's clearly not 100% anonymous because I'm sitting here talking to you, but how, where do you draw that line?
It's really just a convenience thing to me, where like if it's convenient and possible for me to have the helmet on, then at that particular time, then I'm going to have it on. And if it's not, then I'll have it off and just, be me.
First of all, there's a couple milestones that I should mention. Number one milestone, definitely the first DJ with a mask that I've ever had on the show, which I'm super, super stoked about.
Darn. Sorry you couldn't get someone cooler, like Marshmallow.
I mean, but that's the thing, man. Some people take it so seriously that they won't break that veil, you know? Even though everybody, at least in our circles, like, it's not a secret who they are, but, publicly they won't sort of pierce the veil.
Right.
But with you, it's interesting because, you do you call it a mask? Do you call it a helmet? What do you call it?
I think the term I use the most often is microwave.
Accurate.
Or helmet.
Yeah.
I think some of our fans started calling it a microwave and started posting memes of like it being a microwave and like putting Hot Pockets in the helmet or something.
Amazing.
I thought it was hilarious, so I just call it that.
That's so good. But what I like about it is that, it seems like you don't take it too seriously. It's not about necessarily separating you from the public so much as it is just kind of like an extra extension of your whole concept for the project and something people could kind of participate in. But then there never seemed like there was this sort of, who is it? That kind of like intrigue that seems to follow a lot of other masked producers. Yeah,
well, I think that's a big thing about it's like the other side of it. Other artists who have like the mask thing, they have it as part of their brand from inception, and it's a big part of their identity. And for us, that like our brand started like way before the mask, and we had this logo that was a face,
right?
And we were like, it'd be cool if one day we could build some kind of head to wear. But at the time, it was just like too much work to do at that time. We just wanted to release music, we wanted to play shows, and we weren't really focused on like the production aspect of it. It wasn't until later on when we, had more time and resources to do that we were like, hey, let's ramp up the production and make this like a cool thing. And it wasn't like, who is it? It's more like what is it? It's like just an extension of our brand.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives this cool personification of really just our logo that we came up with.
Yes.
It's just we don't take ourselves very seriously at all ever with Barely Alive. So.
Right. Which is, I think that's healthy for any artist project, no matter what the concept is or who it is. But how long did it take, from the time you like seriously started Barely Alive to the point where you built the microwave?
Okay, so we started in 2013 or 2012, about that era.
Yeah.
And then the first show I did with the helmet was 2017. It was the start of the Excision tour in Las Vegas.
Wow, so that's actually, there's a long period before.
Yeah, I did a ton of shows, and we did, many years of music and releases with no helmet, and it was just me.
That's so funny. So what was that moment like when you made the transition? Was there any worry about, how do we present this? What are people going to think when this act that maybe they're familiar with already, has this totally different look? Did you get any kind of reactions or pushback or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we thought a lot about like what the effects might be and what people might think about it, but honestly, we didn't think that hard about it. We were just like, yes, we've always wanted to do this. This is going to look awesome. Let's just like dive into the cold water, and see what happens. And like, I guess there's like maybe a couple comments or something that were kind of like negative at the time, but I just didn't really like focus on that. I focused on like the positive side of it, which is people being like, that's cool.
Yeah. And maybe it's actually, maybe you sort of, without meaning to, did it the really smart, thought out way, because you had already gotten people familiar and into what you were doing, right? And so then when you just added something onto it, it wasn't this new thing that they had to sort of process. It was, just sort of another piece to something they already liked. You know what I mean?
100%.
And we should, for the people listening, we should clarify, Barely Alive is a duo, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you split that up, between touring and production? You just tour, right?
Yeah, so we started the project together with the full intention of doing everything 50-50. So songwriting, production, studio sessions, touring, everything. And the only thing that really changed was that Matt has some health problems that that prevent him from traveling and touring. And that we kind of realized that only after we had done like maybe 4 or 5 shows. I think we did shows in like Seattle and like even like Beta nightclub in Denver. We played that together. Yeah. Which is crazy to think about because that was so long ago.
Well,
and like
yeah, Beta shut down and reopened.
Yeah, like so much history has passed since then.
Yeah. I think about that sometimes.
I know, it's crazy.
Like there's so many, I've talked about this on the show before, but like so many of the clubs that I have my big like rungs on the ladder, these moments where I felt like something really changed for me, like those clubs are gone a lot of times now. Yeah. It's wild, man.
Yeah, like that just happened like last week I was in Colorado Springs and I hadn't been there in like a couple of years. And it was at a different venue, but it was like the same promoter, Chris, who had like moved venues. And I just had I was like, wow, I have so many memories from playing at this club, Raucous, like 4 years ago. And now it's another club now.
Right.
It's like, that's it.
Yeah. And it's so strange too, how you can go to the same city. A lot of the times the same people will come to see you, but if the space is different, somehow the whole vibe of the night changes, Yeah. There's some kind of magic just in the physical space of those venues and those clubs, right? that somehow contributes to, your overall experience. I mean, I guess that's an obvious thing to say, but
that's just the power of architecture and interior design at work.
You're probably right, man. Do you know anything about that?
I mean, not really. I'm interested in architecture, but I'm not like knowledgeable.
I'd love somebody to sit me down and tell me about why the architecture of certain clubs makes them cooler or less cool. Because it's something I'm super interested in, but also 1,000% ignorant about.
Yeah. Well, it's so different, like club to club. There's so many different factors, like size, like the height of the ceilings, like what's on the walls.
Yeah.
Is it like diffused? Is there a bunch of random, like, is there like a bar in the middle?
Right.
Are there balconies, or is it just like a big warehouse with flat walls?
Yeah. How much light is there?
The sound and the feel of it.
Right.
Because you got clubs like Chinese Laundry, and then in Sydney where it's like a little tiny, like
it's like barely a room
basement with like a super low ceiling, and then there's like the giant venues.
Right. And it's interesting because you can go and play either one, right? And your fans can come and see you in either one. And you might not even play a different set, but somehow the experience will be totally transformed. And yeah, it's like, how much light is there? Where are the lights coming from? Yeah. Are there VIP booths on the sides, or is it one big floor? I like talking about it. I don't get to talk about this much.
Yeah, it's a cool thought.
I hate these kind of questions, but if just off the top of your head, like a couple spots you really like that just have that vibe.
Yeah. I'd say in terms of like outdoor venues, the past year, Red Rocks and the Gorge have been like my two favorite spots to play.
Yeah, I've never played Red Rocks. How was it?
It was really cool. Yeah, just being there was cool.
Yeah.
Like playing it was cool, but yeah, just being there, just like seeing the geography.
Yeah, like visually kind of stunning.
So yeah, those are cool, like outdoor venues, but in indoor clubs like Chinese Laundry, Sydney, like I just mentioned,
that's
is always so fun.
Crazy club.
And just like the complete opposite of that. And the other club that just kind of popped into my mind was, I think it's called like Le Bikini in Toulouse, France.
Oh, I've never been.
I was just thinking of it because it has like this amazing sound, despite it being a huge room.
Okay.
Because all the walls are like soundproofed, and the system is so perfectly tuned that it's like being in a giant recording studio full of people.
That's sick, man. I will say one thing constant in every venue I love is that they really maintain the sound system. Mm-hmm. Not just install a nice sound system, but you can tell when you go and there's a club that has a guy that comes in every month and retunes the system after it's taken a beating every night from all these DJs.
Yeah.
Yeah, those clubs, there's a lot of them. The one I'm thinking of now is U Street Music Hall in D.C., just because I've been chilling there a lot. And I mean, that's just a pristine sound system. And there's another one, very minimal. Everything is black, lighting, very minimal, no LEDs at all. Just like there's a few lights up top, some strobes, one long room. It's such a good vibe, man.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's just all about sound.
Pretty much, man, yeah. And not even so much about, looking up at the DJ, which is, in this day and age, something I've come to appreciate a little more.
Yeah.
Because we get so much of that.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. I always thought that was weird. I think maybe that's one of the other reasons why I wanted to do the helmet thing was because I always thought it was a little strange that people will just like watch a DJ.
Right.
Like, why?
Well, and what's even weirder to me, I was just talking to somebody about this, is that for the most part, because of the way DJ booths are structured, you can't really see what the DJ is doing anyway,
exactly.
Right? So even though a lot of times the DJ isn't doing much, regardless, no one can see. So it's like if the hands are the only thing they're moving, you can't see their hands.
Yeah.
This is an age-old problem of us making music on a computer and then trying to translate that into some kind of live performance, live spectacle, whatever it is. And everyone has their own way of sort of threading the needle and figuring out what works for them. But at the end of the day,
it does come back to just, how does it make you feel? How do you want to present it? And I will say, I think a lot of people get caught up trying to just sort of chase what everyone else is doing with live production and not necessarily thinking about why their music is different than other people's and why that might affect their show differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think there's a definite feeling that like if you need to present more, if you want to be more valuable, essentially.
Well, that's part of it too. You're right. There's a competition element. There's I want to get to the next tier. I want to get this slot at the festival. And you're right that some of that does come down to presentation.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just like an investment. It's like, I need more lasers so I can get a better booking or whatever. It's like an equation. More lasers equals dollars.
I'm not going to name
like
who,
that.
but a friend of mine literally said that to me the other day. Seriously. That's so funny. So, okay, I'm not going to harp on this, but I have so many questions about the logistics of wearing the helmet and how that works on stage. Has there been an evolution of what's in the helmet, what materials make up the helmet over time? Like, how did it start? What was version 1?
So version 1 was, it showed up on my doorstep. This guy, Arturo from Puerto Rico, built it, and he just shipped it, and he was like, okay, here you go. And I started using it, and I used it for 2.5 years without really any like upgrades or changes at all.
And was it technological at all, or was it really more just like more of a theatrical mask at that point?
So yeah, the technology was like kind of dead simple, but like really, really functional. And it's like an amazing design. So basically all it was is just like the box. It's got like this see-through film in the front, so I can see through it. Instead, there's no like camera VR thing inside there. It's just like sunglasses, essentially.
Yeah.
There's like the LED strips, and they're linked to a controller that I could control with Bluetooth on my phone.
Oh, sick!
So I could just like change the patterns.
Yeah.
While I'm performing, and then in the back of the helmet, there's 4 computer fans that are blowing in air.
Oh, that's really cool.
To keep me from dying.
Well, yeah. How hot does it get? Even
really
with
hot.
The fans? Yeah.
With the fans, it's not that bad. And that was the one upgrade that I did was I upgraded the fans after like a few weeks of the first tour because I was so hot, and like the helmet was built with like low noise fans that were nice and quiet and just kind of moderate use.
Right.
And I was like, I went online and I just found like what's the loudest, fastest, like most wind turbine fan I can find, and I put 4 of those in, so it's like really loud.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But I can breathe, which is cool.
And I'm sorry if you just said this, but do you have headphones? Are you monitoring sound in there as well?
No, I started out with a pair of headphones in there, just HD25s that were kind of like free floating. And then I just took them out because it was kind of annoying to like,
just too much
because
stuff.
I couldn't take them off my head while I was performing. So if I wanted to move around, I'd have to unplug the cable and just kind of shove it in my pocket.
Right.
So I was just like, I could just not. And I've been using like the sync button and all that stuff for years and years already. So I was like, well, I don't really need headphones at all. It's kind of just, I had been wearing them because I felt like I had to, and I was like, that's stupid. I'm just not going to wear them anymore.
I love that, man. The no headphone movement is a thing. It's I'm still, just because of the era I came from, like I'm so tied to headphones, I feel sort of insecure without them.
Yeah.
But I
totally
support
get
it, man.
that.
It's cool. Because I think, and then that frees you up to have, this is what we've been talking about, a show that's more uniquely you, that fits the project, right? And you don't have to feel tied to something everyone else is doing just because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah. If I was like not, if I didn't want to do the sync button thing, then I might as well just go back to using like vinyl.
Right.
And then I really wouldn't have any time to be like worrying about my visual production.
You definitely wouldn't.
I would just be doing I would spending so much time mixing, and like some people that they really love to do that, and that's their thing.
Right.
But I'm not. I'm like super into technology. I want to know what's the next cool thing that I can do in terms of performance.
Did you start?
I'm looking into that right now. Is like what's the next step going to be? And actually, we're kind of working out the second iteration of the helmet right now.
Okay.
So we already have one, and I've been using it and kind of just testing it out and seeing how it's going to work. And it's eventually going to be able to link with like Resolume, which is the VJ software that all the visual productions use.
Yeah.
So it'll be able to link in with my video production and all that.
And
so if VJ can do that, or I can do it on stage or something.
Sure, yeah. So you can sort of almost combine what's happening on the visuals with what's on your helmet, and that'll be crazy, man.
Yeah, it's about time. It's been a good 2 years, but I want to like make it even better now. So
that's awesome, man.
And
that probably keeps it exciting and fun for you too, right?
Oh yeah,
new challenges, and
it's a lot of work, which is awesome. Like
that's cool.
Yeah.
I like it when people say that, man. You like work, you like being busy, like fixing the problems.
Absolutely. I mean, I have the best job ever. So like when I'm busy, it's awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's
I'd rather be busy doing this than busy doing anything else.
Dude, 100%. Is it heavy? How heavy is the helmet?
Yeah, the old one weighed 8 pounds.
Okay.
And this new one that we're working with, the first version was 12 pounds.
Ooh.
Because of all the new LEDs. So we're trying to work on how to make it lighter. And I think that's going to involve going back to the old fans that I was using that were really, the loud ones.
Oh, the loud ones.
The quiet ones. Yeah.
Got it.
We started using the quiet ones again to see if they would work. And once again, they are too heavy and they don't provide me enough air.
Right.
So I'm like really struggling right now, but it's going to be better.
You get some neck pain from wearing it a bunch?
Yeah, not too bad. I've really built up good neck muscles over the past couple of years. So
yeah, you just train up the shoulders. What are the muscles?
Traps.
The traps, exactly. Run the traps.
Run the trap, exactly.
We were talking about, you brought up vinyl a minute ago. Were you actually playing vinyl back in the day?
No, I never DJ'd with vinyl. I did. I got really interested in vinyl because of my dad's record collection when I was a kid, and I was playing around with that, like scratching all his old like records and ruining them.
What was in there? What kind of stuff?
He had a lot. It was a lot of like Bob Dylan, just kind of like anything from the 70s that was kind of like rock oriented. My mom had a lot of great records too, and then we inherited another record collection from some family friend that had like tons of old like R&B and soul music from the 70s, which is like amazing gold mine for hip hop production. So that kind of like launched my hobby of like sampling and making hip hop beats when I was a kid.
Oh, is that where it started?
Yeah, totally. And then I got a little more interested in like turntable mixing and stuff because Matt had a set of like they weren't Pioneers, they were like some other, or Technics, they weren't some other brand, they was some other brand, but we were playing around with like learning how to beat match on that. I bought like 2 copies of the same funk record that had this little drum break in it.
Okay.
And I was working on like trying to like loop it. So yeah, I did that for a while, and then I was like, this is so much work. I don't want to do this. And then we got a Tractor S4.
Okay.
So yeah, like I feel like I've tried all that, and I've learned how to do like turntable mixing and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So that's cool.
It doesn't really interest me as something I would want to do.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Professionally.
Yeah. And it's cool that you sort of got exposure to that world and learned a little bit about how some people used to make it that way. Because that's probably, I would assume, helps inform, when you're writing, different techniques you can use, probably like little tricks, right, that make your music stand out just a little bit because of sort of where that inspiration came from, even if you're not using the same techniques. Does that make sense? Yeah,
I think it probably had an effect of just making my music slightly different in some way that I can't really quantify. So that's cool. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, man, that is cool. Are you hearing the like? It sounds like there's a TV on or something.
I do hear that.
What is that? I was getting super distracted for a second.
I hear it.
You hear it right now?
If there is a spirit present, let us know. Give us a sign.
Oh my God. All right. If it happens again, we're doing more investigation.
Okay. All right. Deal.
To get us back into it, when you were listening to these records and coming up, where are you from?
Oh,
where was this taking place?
So Matt and I both grew up in a town called Great Barrington in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Which is the west coast, not west coast, the west side of Massachusetts, like upstate New York region.
Got it.
Middle of nowhere, small town. And we were just kind of like bored inside a lot of the time because of, all the snow.
Right.
So I was always like a very nerdy kid, like very into computers and music. And we both were.
Did you know each other as kids?
Yeah, we went to school together since we were like 13 or something.
That's so cool, man. I feel like usually when you hear those stories, people will sort of do something cool or creative with their friends in high school, but then everyone sort of goes their separate ways.
That totally happened though too, because we were friends for throughout high school, and we spent a lot of time sampling records and making music together. And then we graduated and like totally split ways. I went off to college. He went off to college somewhere else, and we kind of just didn't really stay in touch for several years. And then years later, like I think I heard his SoundCloud that he was uploading stuff to, and he was just kind of having fun making crazy like growl bass noises because he was really into like that sound design stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, this is sick. The production, you've gotten really good at it. And I had been doing like dubstep on my own too, just for fun. And I was like, hey, let's like combine our efforts.
That's so cool.
And that was how we reconnected as friends. And
did it end up that you physically ended up in the same place again?
Yeah, eventually. It took a while. Like I was living in Boston, and he was living back in our hometown. And this is like a 2-hour difference.
Right.
And we were writing music over the internet together. So actually, the first couple songs that we wrote as Barely Alive were done kind of mostly over the internet.
Yeah.
And then I needed a job. So I ended up moving back to my hometown to get a job there because I just wasn't really into Boston.
Bro, okay, so I lived in Boston for 2 years after college. I went to college in Rhode Island, and I was not into Boston. If for everybody who lives in Boston who's listening, I love you very much, but that city was just not for me. Yeah,
like that was just me at that time in my life. I would have hated any city that I was living in.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just like I was such like a small town kid. And I never really found like my just my general routine in life kind of. I hadn't really figured things out yet. So it was kind of overwhelming being in a big city like that and not really having a lot of friends.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I was just like, I'm just going to make this easier for myself, go back to small little Great Barrington, do what I know. And, I got a job there pretty easily. And that helped me like stay focused, and eventually I got to quit my job and do just music, which is great.
Absolutely. So did you go to college, or did you go to Boston right after high school?
Yeah, I went to college briefly for about a semester and a half, and then they kicked me out because I wasn't going to class.
Oh yeah, they like it when you do that.
Yeah. I was just I was playing video games and making dubstep and not doing anything else, and that's not really what you're supposed to do when you're at
not
college,
really.
so.
No, yeah, there's not a lot of courses for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish there were.
Yeah, man.
Like I was kind of hoping there'd be more like music production courses available that would keep me kind of interested, but there weren't.
I have a degree in music from my college, and it's specifically for electronic music, but even that wasn't what I wanted it to be. Really.
It'll never be what you want it to be.
Yeah.
The best way to learn is just doing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Or YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube, I would say YouTube University, that's a great school.
Taught me so much.
Oh, man. So, in that time, you're not going to class, you're playing video games, making dubstep. Was this in hopes that this could be a career, or had you not really thought that far along and were just kind of doing what you were excited about at the time?
I really wasn't thinking that much about the future, honestly. I was just kind of doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was just kind of, just doing it for fun, really.
And
there's a definite, I remember there being a definite time where I was like, okay, now I'm going to take this seriously.
When was that time?
It was right after I had reconnected with Matt. And I was like, cool, you're making a bunch of cool music. I'm making a bunch of cool music. We were using different software. He was using in Ableton. I was still in Reason.
Yeah.
So we weren't really collaborating all that much. So I was like, okay, let's take your songs and my songs and put them together on this album, and I'll release it myself on CD Baby. Because I had no idea like if that was something that made sense to do, but I was like, okay, it'll show up on iTunes. That's something.
Yeah, of course.
So I did that.
How did that work? How'd it go?
Well, I mean, obviously no one bought it because I didn't promote it, but it was there.
Yeah.
It's still there if you want to listen to it.
The first official release.
Yeah. And then there was a later time where we really decided like we needed to change our name and like submit our music to labels and get the promotion. So that was the point where I was like kind of taking it more seriously, but I didn't really ever have any idea if whether or not it would work. I was just like, let's see if this works,
Right, of course.
I had no like sure path to success or anything. I was just like, hey, let's try this. And then like we just kind of made like we made the best of everything all the connections that we had in the beginning. I was actually looking through my old documents folder, and I found the first contract I signed that we signed with Disciple Records.
Oh yeah,
which was
for your first release with them.
It was for a remix that we did of this guy called The Brig, and we signed that in 2013.
Wow,
I was like, wow, that is crazy. Because that was the beginning of our relationship with Rossi and Rob over
at Disciple.
Yeah,
and which turned into a pretty fruitful relationship, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that went both ways for sure. Like we've just all grown together.
That's a good point too, right?
Insane way.
Yeah. Because you guys were there for kind of the start of the label as well.
Yeah,
right?
we were the first like exclusive artist signing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool, man. How did that feel at the time? Like when if they're a new label and they don't have even a track record, sure, but also sort of even an identity yet.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about signing up with them and, sort of tossing the dice into the unknown, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, it was a little bit of unknown, but at the same time, I just had such a really good feeling about those guys. And the way I found Disciple was through, I think Astronaut. They did some mix, and I listened to that, and then I was like, Astronaut is so cool. Like their music is so cool. It was Dan and Rossi, and then I found Disciple, and I was like, oh, cool. This is like Dodge and Fusky's label. I love Dodge and Fusky because I was a big fan since I was in like middle school.
Right.
I would listen to Dodge and Fusky riding the bus to school.
Oh wow.
So I was like, yeah, this is a cool label, but they're releasing really cool music. They had a remix package with like 501 and Silent, and I love those guys. I was like, cool. This is like cool.
Yeah.
This is a cool brand.
Yeah. It was sort
cool
of
people
everyone,
doing something
everyone
new.
you were already following anyway, right?
Yeah.
Or new people you were excited about.
And it was a new thing, but I just always thought it was cool.
And it's pretty wild, you were talking about how it's so crazy to think about your first show at Beta and all that, and to turn it around to now look at not only where you guys are with the Barely Alive project, but where Disciple is, and, they've established this whole sort of world for themselves. And, what is really not that long of a time in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. It's pretty impressive, man. And now it seems like Disciple, when I think about it from an outsider's perspective, it's what I think of as this family vibe. That's one thing I think they've been able to do that not a lot of other labels have, where you really feel like a lot of the artists know each other or are friends with each other, and it goes a little deeper than a business relationship. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. That's totally it. And we've always felt like that's what we wanted ourselves as artists from the beginning, since before we met them. We always wanted to only, work with people that we got along with. And, there's a lot of it's a lot about trust, because, you trust your family because they're your family. There's no question about it. And we all trust and look after each other. And it's just like a great sort of mutual thing for everybody.
That's the dream, man, honestly, because I think it's so easy as an artist to feel very isolated in this industry, right? Even if you have friends and acquaintances and people you play shows with or people you make music with, a lot of times at the end of the day, they're looking out for themselves and you're looking out for yourself. And it can feel a little bleak. When I'm in a bad mood, it can feel a little bleak. But I like that idea of, having that extended family, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't always it's not always transactional. Sometimes you meet up and you don't even talk about music,
Yeah.
That's nice. That's a cool vibe.
I can't imagine it any other way, too, since we were their first signing. We've never experienced it any other way.
That's great, man.
We just we've only heard it secondhand from other people's experiences working with other labels or, whatever. It just sounds very different. And I don't think I could survive doing a more independent thing, but it just wouldn't be as fun.
Right. Yeah, it's great to have a team that's not just a business team, but, more of a partner in a life sense. I'm not going to say life partner, but,
Totally. Disciple's my life partner.
Yeah. And it also seems like they want you to win, right? And not just for them, not just for the label. You also put records out with other people at certain times, right? Didn't you do an OWSLA release?
Yep.
Yeah, so and I assume you worked it out so that you could do that and still work with Disciple.
Yeah, well, actually, I don't think we are tied exclusively to Disciple for releases.
Okay.
Exclusively, explicitly.
Right.
That would, but we just don't really have any interest in working with other labels.
Right. But just, I guess, knowing that you have the freedom, and I guess maybe we should just talk about sort of why you did work with OWSLA when you did, and what the thought process was there.
Well, mostly, it's OWSLA. It's Skrillex's label. It's a big deal. Yeah. And they expressed interest, and we were interested, and our management was super interested in it, and it was just there was no reason for anyone to not want to do it.
And that's the thing. Then you come back to your home base, your home label or whatever it is, and your profile is raised. And the next thing you do with them is, I agree with you. Everybody benefits in that situation.
Yeah, it wasn't okay, now we're signing with OWSLA. It's just okay, we'll do an EP. Yeah. And that'll be awesome. And then we'll see what comes next.
Yeah.
And it's cool having that my manager is also the Disciple manager, because there's it's easy to make decisions like that.
Sure.
It's
he doesn't have to clear it with the label.
He doesn't have to clear it with the label. You can just be this is what we want to do.
And has your management been the same people all the full time too? As long as you've been with Disciple, you've been with them for management as well?
Rossi since day one.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
I love those stories when people just find the right people and stick with them, and that's always the way to go. Because I think some people get to a certain level, and it's easy to sort of feel now things aren't moving as fast as I want, or I have all these bigger aspirations. And I think some people's solution is to throw everything away and sort of try to refresh the energy, refresh the team, the ideas, all that. Yeah. But that's many times, I would say more than half the time, that's not going to go well.
Yeah, no, it's It's like renting versus owning. It's like all those moving costs are going to add up.
Oh, I love that.
just plant your roots and everyone grows together and
build your equity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Airbnb out the third floor. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, talk about leaving Boston and leaving Massachusetts, because that whole area, it's interesting to me, just having lived there for a couple of years. It seems like the kind of place where I would expect a ton of people making bass music and it just has that kind of, I don't know, everyone's a little angry, like Boston's kind of has an edge to it.
Yeah. Angry Bostonian stereotype is very true.
Yo, dude, I ran into so many of them in my short time there. And it's just like Boston feels like a macho city to me, And all of that is to say, I was just thinking about this driving over. I'm surprised there aren't more bass artists from that area that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are many, and probably some even listening now that I'll hear about soon.
Hey, don't forget about me.
Yeah. And no,
there's definitely a few, but
shout out to Terravita.
Oh yeah, the Terravita guys.
A couple others.
Yeah, it's strange. I always thought that was strange. And there's like Berklee College of Music.
Yeah, that
definitely
too.
Generates a lot of really skilled, talented musicians.
Yeah.
It just seems like they all kind of like disperse and go elsewhere afterward.
That's true. I mean,
there's no like real heart of the scene in Boston.
It's true. Yeah. It's like a
versus
very
like New York, I guess, would probably be a bit more of a scene. And also like right now, I think one of the like a hotbed of like at least dubstep, like for up and coming guys, is Philly.
Is that right?
Yeah. I know like so many super crazy talented kids in Philly right now, or in that general area.
Interesting.
Who are...
I wonder why that is. I mean, Philly's always been great. Every time I play shows there, it's amazing. It's a great city, but I wonder why specifically there's a bunch going on there now.
No idea.
Yeah, sometimes there isn't a reason.
It doesn't make sense. It's like every major city has like young, motivated kids with laptops and internet connections. Like, why don't they all do this?
Right.
I don't know. It's like, what makes one city different than the other?
Yeah.
It's like, I went to high school with one other guy who was into this. And there's kids who are like, here's my 5 producer friends. We all went to high school together. I'm like, what?
Right.
And you're all like insanely talented? Like how?
It's, dude, it's so strange. And they get so
Shout out
good.
to Niptane and the boys.
Okay. I got to look into them. And they're so good so fast now too. The pace is accelerating. Which I'm glad about, because I think now that younger producers are able to share resources and share knowledge more easily, I think that is contributing to sort of the evolution of dance music as a whole, which, we really need. And most of those evolutions are going to come from the super young kids. And I'm always just excited to see what they're going to do next,
Yeah.
Because I think it's a common question. I'm sure you've gotten asked this in interviews of, what is the future of dubstep? What's the next big sound in dance music? Which is an impossible question to answer. And all I can ever really say is just, it's whatever the kids are doing.
Yeah.
Like people, and when I say kids, I basically just mean anyone younger than me, probably under 18.
Or just like, you don't even have to be young. You just have to be like, have to have a fresh approach to it.
That's true,
so
too.
If you just start like getting into production when you're 30, like same thing.
It's true, yeah.
If you know nothing about dubstep or EDM or music, and then you just decide one day that you're going to become a producer, like that's such an important pivotal time where you could just immediately pour out all these new ideas because you have a fresh take on it.
Yeah, well, there's a freedom.
After many years, it's harder.
You're right, man. And
do that.
There's a freedom, too, to when you're just starting, right? Because not only do you not know how to do everything yet, and so you'll probably do some stuff wrong and figure out some cool things that are unique to you in the process, but you don't have that frame of reference yet. You're not necessarily saddled with anything you've put out before that changes how you feel about your new work. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about, like, the thousands of listeners who are going to judge you.
That's true too.
Not that that's always a bad thing, but like it's something that definitely will influence your art.
Yeah.
Once you know that, like, if I'm making something that I'm then going to present to a lot of people and they're going to listen to it, it's totally different from like, I'll upload this, it'll get like maybe 20 plays.
Right.
Most of them is like my dog, my
who
girlfriend.
accidentally stepped on the computer.
Yeah. It's like there's just not that element. It totally changes a lot.
How about for your songwriting process, yours and Matt's at this point? Does that awareness of, the brand of Barely Alive, the expectation of the listeners, do you feel like that puts any direction or constraints or anything on the way you write music?
I mean, I can't say that it doesn't, but I would never say that like we tailor our music specifically to the expectations of our fans. And if we do, it's like to subvert their expectations instead of like kind of spoon feeding them. We've always been really like aware of that, is like people expect X, so we want to do Q,
Yeah.
Just something completely different.
And you guys have always been really good. Well, first of all, you put out albums, which not everybody does, which I really like. And those albums, the styles and sounds are so diverse on there. And I think you've always been really good about keeping the balance between sort of this is the dance floor banger that's very of the moment and sort of slots in easily. But then also, we're into all these other things. And actually, if you stick with this, you can kind of tell how it all connects,
Yeah, thanks. We work really hard to do that. And we are super into making all kinds of music. One of those just happens to be dubstep. And
right.
Dubstep is kind of like the bread and butter of our music and our careers, but we have so much fun making other kinds of music too.
Yeah, do you ever feel, or even at the beginning in earlier years, like did you ever feel like you were sort of getting pigeonholed into, just a dubstep act, and you sort of felt like, well, actually, this is a much more varied project? I'm just wondering, especially in this day and age, because dubstep is so big now, how do you sort of split that between art versus commerce, I guess, and, giving the people what they want versus challenging yourself creatively?
Well, dubstep is awesome, and I like it a lot. I've always liked it, and I think I like it because it's so flexible and like weird. And that you can have two dubstep songs that sound so different. So if I had to like, I'd rather like be pigeonholed as a dubstep artist than be pigeonholed as any other kind of artist. Because
that's fair.
I can still play shows and just play literally whatever I want.
Right.
As long as, there's like half of it is dubstep. The other half can be like whatever I really want.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask about that too, because I think I've only seen you play once, and it was a long time ago. At your shows these days, are you able to, play the more vibey stuff off your albums and kind of mix it in a little bit?
Well, it's always funny when people ask that. It's like, can you do that? Like, yeah, I can do whatever I want. I could play an hour of Michael Jackson if I wanted to. But obviously if I did that, people would be really mad.
That's my question, right? How do you keep them happy and still do it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, no one really ever has complained about one of our shows. So I don't know. Maybe I should start playing weirder music.
Just see how far you can push it before you get complaints.
Yeah, it's always been fun to try to like push the boundaries of what we can get away with. And yeah, I play some weird stuff.
But you also must be aware that a lot of people don't, right? I think that makes your sets stand out a lot, probably.
Yeah.
Because I think there is, this goes back to that sort of competitive and sort of ranking yourself mindset of, everyone feels like, well, I have to have the hands in the air the entire time, each drop harder than the last, that kind of thing.
It doesn't always work. Like that same formulas don't always work anymore, where like you play dubstep for an hour, because it's not like when you play a festival, it's like you're going to play back to back with a bunch of other house acts or something like that, or drum and bass. And then like, you're going to be like the one dubstep guy. It's like now dubstep is huge. You're going to play a whole night of dubstep on one stage.
Right.
And it's just going to be drop, drop, drop for like 5 hours. So
It's exhausting.
if you want to keep people's interest and keep their hands up, you actually have to really get creative.
I like that, man. Yeah, that's actually a really good way to look at it, is instead of trying to compete on other people's playing field and just trying to sort of outdo whatever they're doing, the real solution to it is to go further into your own lane, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I would want to be remembered not as like from start to finish the heaviest, hardest set of the whole night, but more as like the weird, like playing some of the most left field music and then just transitioning straight into like the heaviest thing you've ever heard.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
Because that's way more memorable.
Absolutely, man.
Contrast is super important.
There you go. And so let's talk about, because your albums have a ton of contrast. I think that's a really good just sort of concept to talk about your albums. You know, how did you even think of an album in the first place? Like, why an album? Especially because it was fairly early on in your career as Barely Alive, right? Mm-hmm. What was the thought process before the first album? Do you remember that time?
Yeah, it was kind of just like a natural progression. We had so many demos and we just couldn't really figure out what to do with them.
Yeah.
And they were so diverse and so many different genres that we were like, well, we can't really just make an EP out of this. We have to make it an album, and we need to write more songs actually and make different genres and just be weird and kind of create this unit, because we both really like albums, and you know, we both grew up with vinyl records and like holding an LP and like reading the notes and looking at the art and the front art and the back art and just kind of having this product.
Right.
And we really liked that. So making an album was super fun.
That actually makes me think of another thing about your music I wanted to mention, is that I think one thing that sets it apart is that you can, just by listening, you guys are referencing different eras and different influences, right? Beyond just dance music and kind of different, even, I would say even different styles of production in a way, if you know what I mean. And I was wondering how conscious that was of, you know, not just making an album with a bunch of different genres on it, but also sort of referencing your influences more openly like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was that a conscious thing though? Like, would you hear an old record or an old song and that kind of gives you an idea of, I could try this style, but update it for what I do?
Yeah, definitely. We do that a lot, especially with like 80s music.
Right.
We're really interested in all that production magic that was happening in the mid 80s when people were like buying these crazy synthesizers and drum machines and learning how to use them and using them in really bizarre ways that like don't make any sense.
Right.
And it just kind of creates this little sound, and then everyone started referencing each other and creating this sound that kind of defined like the 80s. And we love that sound, and we want that, but like modern. We want to like update that and keep it going, keep it alive.
I love that, man, because so much of music is cyclical, right? And styles that were in, they go out of fashion, they come back into fashion, 10, 20 years down the line. And I love, and I don't think enough people do this, of referencing those older styles and trying to bring them back sort of into modern culture, but just a little flipped, a little through your own lens. And the music gets so much richer for me. You know what I mean? Like there's context for it.
Yeah, it's like when you it's called musical cliches. It's when it sounds like something bad, but it's not. It's like an ARP 303 or something, or like an acid bass. That's like a cliche. So when you use that, it's like you instantly it has that identity. And you're like, oh, I know what that sound is. I've heard that in this track or this track. And it's not like you're just like ripping something off. It's like you're not ripping off the Winstons when you sample the Amen break. It's just you're using like an instrument, like a guitar or a piano, but it's that one wave file.
Absolutely.
So
that's a good way to think about sampling in general.
I think it just carries a lot of power when you use sounds like that are just kind of like legendary sounds.
Sure. And
whether
then
it's like the Simmons SD5 toms or like, you know, like the acid bass or those annoying donk noises from like 90s
totally
hard dance or
I
whatever.
love those noises.
Yeah, it's like those are just fun, identifiable sounds.
Right. And if you recontextualize
for whatever reason, they've become kind of legendary.
Yeah. And then if you're able to sort of recontextualize them, it's really fun. And people, in a way, it's almost like you're inviting people in a little bit, you know, because that's a way they can instantly engage with your music. And then there's all these other layers to it, right? That's what I like about sampling in general is people can engage with it at sort of whatever level they're comfortable at. Because if somebody doesn't know the 303 ARP noise, they can still hear that noise and hear it in a song and think it sounds great and like the song. But then if they do know where it comes from and they can identify it, then at least mentally, if I'm put myself in the place of a listener, then you connect with the artist, right? Because they use this, which means they know about that. Well, I know about that. And then you think about other records that you like that use that. And to me, it kind of builds a connection between a listener and a musician a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a funny thing because when I'm writing music, I don't consciously think about that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's much more sort of trying to catch a creative spark subconsciously. It's never having like a super nerdy thought like that and then trying to make a musical moment. But
I have nerdy thoughts all the time when I'm producing.
Well, that's an interesting question about your songwriting process. You know, how does it usually start or come from any particular area? Does it start as a concept? Does it start as a sound you make? Does it start as a drum rhythm?
It's always something different, honestly. It would be hard to explain like my routine when I sit down and make music. I really don't have one. It's kind of good to avoid routines like that, I think, because then you always start by doing the same thing and then you're going to end up with the same product. So the more you can change up how you sit down and start writing music, the better. Yeah. Because you're always going to end up with something kind of different.
I like that. Yeah. And maybe in each session you do, each time you sit down to write music, you'll probably figure out a new trick, right? Or pick up a new tool. And then you can kind of put that in the tool belt and use it the next time, but maybe not in the same place or maybe not at the same stage in the process. I'm fascinated by people's creative processes and the fact that everyone's a little different and there's no real right way to do it, no real roadmap.
Yeah, it is cool. Like I hear about other people's creative processes and sometimes my first reaction is like, oh, that's really smart. I should be doing that. And then I catch myself and I'm like, well, no, if I should be doing that, I would be doing it already. It's like, I just do what works for me. It's like you can definitely take like those, like the tools and put them in your toolbox. You can like get ideas for tools from other people, but you can't take the creative process completely. You have to shape it yourself.
Yeah. At the end of the day, man, the only thing that makes us different from any other artists is our brain, right?
Yeah.
And all the particular oddities of our individual brains that, good or bad, that's what makes the art that comes out of us.
Yeah. It's like, it's crazy how it's like, if you could define music as like a problem you have to solve, there's like an infinite number of solutions to that one problem.
That's a good way to think about it.
And you can't really find that anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's true, man. Maybe this is why there aren't really schools for music the way we want.
Yeah, there's no rules.
Yeah.
It's like the problem solving it can be done in so many different ways.
How has producing as a duo evolved for you over the years? Like, do you guys... does one person always do the drums, another person does the synths? Do you sort of have, areas of expertise that complement each other? What's the process now?
Yeah, it's at this point, it gets kind of memey because after all these years, we kind of have like roles we assign each other.
Yeah.
So like, I just don't even bother making drums anymore because Matt's so much better at it than me. So I'll just like, I have a folder now of drums that he's made and some that I've made.
Sure.
Like it's not like completely all him. And then like the bass noises, like there's some bass noises that are classified as Willy noises.
Yeah.
Which are like not like insanely complicated sounds. They're just like a blap blap blap. I don't know how to describe them, but
sure.
They're not insanely complicated. And then Matt will make his Matt noises, which are like really intense.
Right.
And he'll focus on making that one sound for like an afternoon and then be like, yeah, that's the sound. And then it's really cool and it has a lot of impact. Whereas my noises are kind of more like filler noises, I guess. I have a very broad palette of sounds that I like to use, and like all those cliches, like, you know, acid bass, Hoover, Reese,
right?
All the classics, and I like making lots of different kinds of sounds, even if each individual sound isn't amazing.
Sure, but that's kind of the answer I love, is that, you know, you each have a skill set. You use it to sort of elevate each other's games, right? And individually, the result, the sum of the parts is bigger than the individual, right?
Yeah, we totally have complementary skills and strengths and weaknesses. So like Matt's strengths are like sound design and writing little loops, like 2 to 4 bars of just like a cool pattern with like drums, a couple sounds, and he can just write really good flows. And that's like pretty much all he will do. Like he'll never just send me, hey, I wrote this song, what do you think about it? It'll be like, hey, I made these 2 bars. Maybe we should make it into an actual song now. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So then I will have so much fun writing like intros and just structuring stuff out and like finding samples and kind of finishing the song.
That's so good, man. That's the perfect partnership.
And he has no interest in doing that at all.
That's the thing, right? Yeah. So you get to work on the stuff you like to do the most.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the stuff that seems annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather not bang my head against the wall on like a 2-bar loop for an afternoon.
Yeah.
I'd rather like sit down, write a whole song that's awesome, that has, you know, very cinematic, lots of cool transitions, and then call it a day.
Yeah. And you guys, do you share a musical brain at this point? How much headbutting goes on, or, you know, argument about the way a song should go? We've gotten really good at it at this point. Yeah.
We definitely do want the same things, which is awesome.
Well, maybe that's a good way to talk about the Odyssey album a little bit, because when I heard that album, it really seemed like an evolution to a certain point of your sound, and more than an evolution, it seemed like a mission statement almost of, you know, we've been here for a while, you kind of know what we do, but we actually have a bigger vision for this. That's how it felt to me. Did you feel, was that a level up moment in your own head?
Always, yeah. Every time we do a big project like that, it feels like we're getting closer to kind of genuinely expressing ourselves. And I think we did an okay job, but, you know,
I think you did a great job. I love that album. I always feel like we can do better. So yeah, we're probably going to do another album sometime soon, and it'll be more diverse and cool and or something. I don't know. Yeah. You don't have to know. That's all right.
It might be a completely different thing, but.
But I like that, man. You don't have to know, as long as you're still having fun pushing your own boundaries. And it's maybe better to not have the plan yet, you know? And do you have a vision? You were talking earlier about evolving the live show as well. Do you have sort of any thoughts about the future of the project? Not in terms of, you know, just like what's your next single, but, you know, what are some of your goals?
So we've met a lot of our goals that we set over the years, and I realized that the other day is like I set all these goals for the project like years ago, and we kind of just met them and then haven't set a lot of new goals. So I've been working a lot this year on like figuring out what's our next goal. And a lot of it is like doing our like focusing more on visual stuff.
Okay.
So we put a lot of energy into like merch and making new live show visuals, kind of redesigning a bunch of just general branding stuff. We got a new logo finally this year after like 5 years.
Nice.
It's like barely even different. I can't even tell that it's different, but it changed.
No, that's cool, man. I think that's like that's the big corporate way to do it, right? I don't mean that in a bad way, but you know, these multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Yeah, we definitely took.
Yeah,
we took that route because all the like Facebook and all those companies, they change like a tiny little corner
right
every year or so.
Yeah,
and no one notices. So that's what we did.
Yeah, and it just somehow keeps it fresh somehow and exciting. I don't know. I'm sure people get paid a lot of money to, you know, explain why that is true, but I've always thought that's interesting.
Yeah. I'll take their word for it.
Yeah.
If it works for them, it should work for us.
Absolutely. So how are, you know, coming from the small town background, now you're out here in LA, you tour the world, you're around tons of people all the time. How's that been? Did you just sort of adjust over time?
Oh, yeah. I just got totally thrown into it. I was just like this awkward kid and suddenly just made all these friends and interesting people and just thrown into the mix in front of a bunch of crowds. And it was like really weird and surreal for a few years. And then it just kind of became life. And it's a cool life. I like it.
Yeah.
I think I didn't like reject it at first. I was like, yes, this is good.
So maybe it felt almost more natural than what you had come from. Like you were searching for whatever the next thing was going to be, and then it actually ended up being what you were doing.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. That's a good way to do it, because I think it would be so easy to, you know, just be thrown into it, like you said, but then just be stressed out by all the people and not know how to act. It's weird because it could go one of two ways, right? When all of a sudden, if you're thrown on stage around a lot of people who want to talk to you in a big city you're not used to, it's cool. Do you think it was because you had that support system early on? You know, you were working with an old friend, you found a label and a team kind of at the start?
Yeah, it definitely helped. And it's just, it would always made it kind of easier versus like if I'm just a random guy, you know, at a party or something, versus like I had something to talk about with all these people who share the same interest. I think it just made my life a lot easier, honestly. And now I just am better at, I'm a little bit better at just not being awkward in normal life circumstances, but still I'm quite awkward.
Well, sure. I mean,
but I've just learned to kind of embrace it and not worry about it.
It's a strength in a way. And one thing that I learned over time is that no matter how good you get at being social and being a public figure and all that, you're still going to feel like the awkward kid on the inside. So you might as well embrace it.
Totally.
And, okay, last thing I absolutely have to touch on before we get out of here. Second milestone for this episode, the first time I've ever interviewed another Willy.
Yes.
There's really
Finally.
not. Do you know any other Willys in dance music? I know one other.
No, not Willys. I mean, maybe a William or a Bill.
That's what I'm saying, but no, fuck those guys.
Yeah. Willie, no, I don't know any. Willie Nelson, never met him.
Yeah, true. Shout out to Willie Nelson, a longtime listener of the podcast. He's a big fan. But no, the only other one I know is Gas Lamp Killer is also Willy. And
didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a Willy.
So are you a William?
Yeah, my full name is William. You as well, I assume.
Yeah.
But you do the IE, right?
Yeah.
And I do the Y.
Yeah, I did the Willie Nelson IE.
Which is funny because I'm actually partially named after Willie Nelson, so my mom tells me. Yeah. But they went with the Y for whatever reason.
Yeah, I guess I kind of am named after Willie Nelson, I guess.
Is that right?
I think it was between that and this baseball player named Willie Mays.
I used to have one of his, when I was a kid, I had baseball cards, and my most valuable card was like a rare Willie Mays card.
Yeah, my dad was super into baseball cards as well.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure I still have that card. That was like one of my prized possessions when I was a kid. Yeah. Except baseball cards are one of those things that lost value over time. Like they're not really worth that much anymore.
Yeah, I think my dad's got eaten by mice too.
No.
Some of them, yeah, they got little nibbles.
Oh, fuck, man.
I don't know why. Like, it's paper.
Yeah, come on,
not
mice. Although mice and rats, they'll eat anything, man.
Yeah.
I was, there's a story for another day, but I was squatting in a Boston University dorm for a summer, like actually squatting, living there illegally. And one night, it was not a very nice situation in any sense. And a rat ate through part of the wall while I was there. Just like over time, like you would hear like, and then, 2 weeks later, I was like, that hole didn't used to be there in the wall.
That's crazy.
Yeah. To date myself, if you want to know, our solution to that problem is we took an AOL Instant Messenger CD and taped it over the hole.
I remember those CDs.
And then we would hear the rat trying to eat through the CD.
It's like the 30 days free internet or something like that.
Yep. And they made millions of them, and they were Frisbees and coasters.
Frisbees.
Yeah, all of that.
Beep, boop, 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 boop.
Ooh, yeah. Nice.
Dial up.
There's a sample right there for you, all you young producers. Well, before we get out of here, is there anything we haven't covered? Anything you want to let the people know about? Anything else that's on your mind?
No, not really. I like how this is just kind of like a conversation.
Yeah, me too, man. This has been really fun.
I've had a lot on my mind with just like the live show aspect of it is what I'm focusing on a lot right now. So that's going to be in development for the next few months, and hopefully we'll see some cool products of that.
Yeah, a little evolution. Are you off the road a little bit more right now?
No, well, kind of, yeah. I just got done with like 2 months of like straight touring, mostly because I was in Europe and Australia, so I had a lot of like downtime there, but I wasn't home. Now I'm back in America, touring America.
Right.
So I have more time here in my studio during the week, which feels like time off, even though I'm touring constantly.
Right. Of course.
So yeah, I have more time to work on stuff. And
well, that's good.
I need to plug our Patreon.
Yeah, please. Let's do it.
So we launched our Patreon a couple months ago, and what we're doing is offering things like sample packs and stems and instrumentals, and also just free downloads of all our music. Access to a Discord server where you can just chat with us and hang out.
Yep.
And also we have like a little feedback thread going where producers will submit their demos every month, and then we do a live stream where we go through them and review them and give advice and stuff like that.
Very cool.
And it's been so fun. We've met a lot of cool like aspiring producers through Patreon.
Right.
And managed to like make some sweet connections and do a lot of fun work and produce cool video content, which is really fun to do.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/barelyalive.
There you go. And I'll put a link to that in the description of this episode when it comes out. And that's cool too, man, because that's just another outlet, right? Like I look at that the same way I look at me doing this podcast, or I do a Sirius XM like mix show every week too, which is related to my main stuff, but it's a different kind of brain power, a different kind of creativity. And I find it really refreshing to do that kind of stuff. Do you guys as well, like just going through and listening and talking about, an unknown producer's music? That's got to feel different than, like a peer, not even a peer, but it's got to feel different than sort of being in our little bubble, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's just another way to explore, like, what can you do with your project? And it's not just about like the money, because obviously there's money involved, but it's like, what more could we be doing with the time that we have? And what do people want to see us do? So it's a lot of like, that's basically what we did. It was like, we asked the people who are interested in the Patreon, it's like, what do you want us to do? And they told us like, we want feedback and stuff like this. So we did that. And we're also doing YouTube tutorials as well. Yeah. Where we're teaching a lot of our techniques that we've been kind of like hoarding to ourselves over the years. This year is kind of like a turning point where we're like, all right, we're like, everything has shifted so much over the past few years.
Yeah.
there's no point in us like trying to like hide our secrets or whatever. We just want to like just kind of jettison everything that we know, and like maybe kids will learn something from it, and we can move on and learn new techniques.
That's the thing,
and just
man.
refresh.
Right, exactly, because that's how you're going to keep yourself fresh anyway. If you just got too comfortable using the same tricks over and over, we talked about that already. You know, that's just,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it's not like our YouTube channel is just going to be like a bunch of old tricks that we don't don't really support, we don't do anymore. But we just we're trying to just explain what we do and why we do it, and I don't know, maybe we'll learn something new.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's such a cool idea. And how, you know, if you're on tour constantly, especially like the world touring, are you happy doing that? Do you like being on the road super heavy?
Yeah, it's been a long 5 years, but it's still fun. I love traveling. I love food.
Yeah.
So being able to sample food from like every country in the world is amazing. And it's definitely a blessing being able to do that. It does get a little tiring sometimes, but it just makes every day that I have at home just feel like that much more special, which is kind of cool.
That's great, man. You got a good attitude about all this stuff. I like this. All right, final question. Just a time in your life, a memory from any time in your life when in a moment music really meant something to you, really affected you deeply.
The first thing that comes to mind would be the trip that we all took to Thailand at the beginning of the year with all the disciple crew. And that was just like really special because we were all just kind of hanging out together. And it was just like that whole family element of it. Because we were there for music. Like we did one show, but that wasn't even like what was on everyone's mind at the whole time. It was just...
It's like a writing camp, right?
Well, no, we didn't even do any work.
Oh,
we were
really?
just hanging out.
Okay. There you go.
Being friends and just enjoying life and, you know, doing cool stuff in Thailand, like bathing elephants and stuff like that.
Sounds
it's just
amazing.
like, of course, music feels incredibly meaningful to me when I'm doing stuff like that because it's like, I never in a million years would be hanging out with like that many friends in some other crazy country at a nice... in a beautiful place and bathing elephants.
Right.
For any other reason, like that's the only way that could ever happen. So
that's a beautiful moment.
That was
man.
cool.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're all like really into doing that. Everyone is like super excited about those trips that we do every year.
That's great, man. It's like like a team building exercise.
Yeah, kind of. It doesn't even feel like that though.
No,
it's so like casual and there's no work involved at all. It's just hanging out.
Right. Well, and that's, maybe the proof that it's not, sort of just an image thing, right? That it is actually more of a family vibe for what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a rare thing. And it's nice you're able to be aware of it and celebrate it in the moment and recognize its rarity, That's cool. Well, this has been really fun. I'm really glad this like kind of came together last minute.
Yeah, I am too. I was kind of nervous because I've never done like a long format podcast like this before.
Oh, you were great, man. How you feel? You feel good?
Yeah, I feel great. It's like one of these things that like it's kind of scary at first, and then once you're doing it, it's great. And then at the end, you're like, yeah, I'm glad I did that.
Oh, good.
It's like how I used to feel about performing.
Really?
Yeah, and then I got over my fear. So, yeah, maybe next time it'll feel better.
Hey,
to begin with. But it was really fun.
Well, you're more than welcome.
I had a great time doing this.
Good, man. Yeah, we'll do round 2 sometime soon.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man. Peace.
All right, that's the show. Shout out to Barely Alive. Shout out to my brother, Willy. There's not enough of us out here, man. We got to stick together. And shout out to you, the listener. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Don't forget, Barely Alive has some brand new merch that just dropped in their store. They've got their Patreon page set up where you can go support them and get a bunch of exclusive goodies. They've got a new song out right now called Spicy Future. There's a lot going on. So hit the link in the description of this episode. You can go follow them. You can also keep up with me. backtobackpod@gmail.com is the email address, or you can hit me up at backtobackpod or at Willy Joy on all social media. That's it for this week. Another episode in the can. I hope you like this one. We had a good time doing it. We never found that ghost. If you see the ghost, I guess just let me know what the ghost is up to. And that's it, man. I hope you have a great week. I hope you have a great weekend. And I will talk to you next week. Take care of yourself. Have a good one. For Back to Back, this is Willy Joy. Peace.